Emily worked night shift at a small convenience store. Christmas Eve was always quiet, but at 11:47 p.m., the phone rang. She answered, expecting a customer asking about holiday hours. A man whispered, "Don't be alone tonight." She hung up, thinking it was a prank. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same voice. Same whisper. "You shouldn't be alone." She checked the security cameras. The store was empty. The third call came at midnight. But this time the whisper wasn't on the phone. It came from the back of the store. Emily froze. On the security monitor, she saw a figure standing in the dark storage room, staring at the camera. He wore a Christmas hat. Police arrived minutes later, but the man was gone. The only thing they found was a footprint on the cold floor and a message scratched into the door. "See you next Christmas." It was Christmas Eve, and the first real blizzard of the season had turned my small town into a snow globe. I was tucked away in my grandmother's old house, a place filled with the ghosts of Christmases past. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the scent of pine and cinnamon hung heavy in the air. It was perfect. Cozy, safe, or so I thought. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A number I didn't recognize flashing on the screen. I usually ignore unknown callers, but something about the festive season makes you a little more trusting. I answered, a cheerful hello on my lips. Silence. Then, a sound like static, or maybe wind whistling through a broken pane of glass. "Hello?" I repeated, a little louder this time. A voice finally crackled through, distorted and faint, like a radio signal from a forgotten time. It was a man, his voice a low, raspy whisper. "Do you see the lights? Eh? Asketh." I glanced out the window at my neighbor's elaborate Christmas display, blinking in a riot of red and green. "Yes, they're very pretty," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Whom am I speaking with?" The static hissed again. "Not those lights," the voice rasped. "The ones inside, the ones on your tree." A chill, colder than the blizzard outside, traced a path down my spine. My Christmas tree stood in the corner, its fairy lights twinkling softly. They were the only lights on in the living room besides the fire. How could he know that? "I'm sorry, you must have the wrong number," I said, my voice trembling slightly. The man chuckled, a dry, rattling sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Oh no," he whispered. "I have the right house. I've been watching. You have a beautiful angel on top of your tree, just like the one she had." My heart hammered against my ribs. The angel was a family heirloom, a delicate hand-painted figure my grandmother had cherished. No one outside my family knew about it. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" The line was quiet for a moment, the static swelling and then receding. "You don't remember me, do you?" the voice murmured, a strange note of sadness creeping in. "But I remember you. I remember this house. I remember that tree." The power flickered, and the fairy lights on my tree blinked out, plunging the room into near darkness, lit only by the dying embers in the fireplace. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a scream. "What do you want?" I whimpered into the phone. The voice on the other end was clearer now, as if he were standing right outside the window. "I just wanted to come home for Christmas," he said. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the darkened Christmas tree. The wind howled outside, rattling the old window frames, and in the sudden, deafening silence of the house, I heard a new sound. It was faint at first, but growing steadily louder. The soft, rhythmic crunching of footsteps in the fresh snow, heading directly toward my front door. I backed away from the window, my eyes wide with terror, scanning the deep shadows that now consumed the room. The footsteps stopped. A long, agonizing silence stretched on, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. Then, a soft, tentative knock echoed through the house. Once, twice, a third time, the Christmas caller had arrived. Maria always decorated her tree the same way each year, using her mother's old ornaments. That Christmas, she found a small, dusty glass ornament. She didn't recognize dark green with a strange symbol etched into it. She assumed her mother must have bought it long ago and hung it on the tree. That night, the ornament started to rattle. She thought it was the heater or wind, but as she got closer, she realized the sound was coming from inside the ornament, like something tapping. At 3:12 a.m., the ornament fell to the floor and shattered. Maria turned on the light and froze. Inside the broken pieces was a photograph, a picture of her sleeping, taken from inside her own bedroom. The date on the back was last Christmas, but the scariest detail, she had been living alone since then. It was supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year. My family and I had just moved into this old Victorian house, a real fixer-upper, but it had character. We decided to host our first Christmas here. As I was rummaging through the attic, looking for old decorations left behind by the previous owners, my hand brushed against a dusty, velvet-lined box. Inside, nestled on faded satin, was a single, exquisite ornament. It was a glass bauble, deep crimson, with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift in the dim light. I'd never seen anything like it. It was beautiful, yet something about it felt off-cold. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just the attic chill, and hung it proudly on the most prominent branch of our tree. That was my first mistake. Later that evening, as the house settled into a quiet hum, I was admiring the tree. The lights twinkled, casting a warm glow, but my eyes kept being drawn back to that crimson ornament. For a fleeting second, I thought I saw the silver pattern swirl, forming a face, its mouth agape, in a silent scream. I blinked, and it was gone. Just a trick of the light. Premeta, told myself, but a cold dread began to creep up my spine. I walked closer, reaching out to touch it. The glass was unnaturally cold, like a shard of ice. As my fingers made contact, a whisper, faint as a winter breeze, slithered into my ear. A name I didn't recognize, spoken in a voice filled with ancient sorrow and rage. I snatched my hand back, my heart pounding against my ribs. The next day, strange things started happening. Christmas carols on the radio would distort into discordant wails. The sweet smell of gingerbread turned sour and acrid, like something burning. My kids complained of nightmares, of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of their beds, its eyes like glowing embers. I tried to convince myself it was just the stress of the move, the unfamiliarity of a new home. But deep down, I knew it was the ornament. Its presence felt like a weight, pressing down on the whole house, suffocating the festive cheer. That night, I was woken by a scratching sound. It was coming from the living room. Slowly, I crept downstairs. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. It was coming from the tree. I peered into the darkened living room, my breath catching in my throat. The only light came from the street lamp outside, casting long, dancing shadows. There, by the tree, a small figure was hunched over. I thought it was my youngest, sleepwalking, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw it wasn't a child. It was a grotesque, misshapen thing, like a broken doll, with long, spindly fingers scratching at the floorboards, carving symbols I didn't understand. Its head slowly twisted around, and it looked right at me. It had no eyes, only dark, empty but I knew it could see me. It opened its mouth, and a sound like grinding stone filled the room. It was trying to speak. It was trying to say that name again. The name from the whisper. The name of the thing trapped inside the crimson ornament. I couldn't take it anymore. The joy was gone, replaced by a suffocating terror. This thing, this entity tethered to the ornament, was feeding on our fear, growing stronger with every passing hour. I knew I had to get rid of it. I grabbed a fireplace poker, my hands trembling, and advanced on the tree. The ornament pulsed with a malevolent, crimson light, the entire room growing colder. The whispers were a chorus now, a cacophony of lost souls screaming in my mind. As I raised the poker to smash the bauble, the air grew thick and heavy. The lights flickered and died. In T-sudden absolute darkness, I heard one final, clear sound. Not a whisper this time, but a child's giggle, echoing from right behind me. I turned, but there was nothing there. Only the cold, and the dark, and the chilling realization that breaking the ornament might not be the end. It might just be the beginning. Justin lived in a quiet cabin near the woods. On Christmas night, he stepped outside to enjoy the fresh snowfall. The snow was untouched, perfectly smooth. But when he returned an hour later, he noticed footprints leading from the woods to his front door. Not animal tracks, human footprints, bare human feet. He followed the trail with his flashlight. The prints walked right up to his front porch, then stopped. There were no prints going back. Something had walked to his house but never left. Later that night, Justin heard soft tapping on his bedroom window. He looked outside. Nothing but snow, smooth, untouched. The next morning, he stepped outside and saw a new set of prints. This time, they started at his window. Ever been out in fresh snow, where everything is silent and untouched? It feels peaceful, right? But what if you saw a set of footprints that just ... ended? No tracks leading away, no sign of a struggle, just footprints that stopped dead in the middle of nowhere. That's exactly what happened in a few chilling real-life cases that have baffled investigators for years. Today, we re-step into the cold to uncover 3 of the most mysterious stories of footprints in the snow that lead to absolutely nowhere. Our first story takes us to the harsh wilderness of the Ural Mountains in 1959. You might have heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident. 9 experienced hikers were found deceased under bizarre circumstances. When rescuers finally reached their abandoned tent, it was sliced open from the inside. But the strangest part? Barefoot tracks led from the tent into the deep snow, stopping abruptly nearly a mile away. There were no signs of a struggle, no other people's tracks, just the hikers' footprints. What could make 9 seasoned adventurers flee their only shelter, shoeless, into a frozen nightmare? The official cause of death was listed as a compelling natural force, a vague explanation that has only fueled speculation for decades. Now, let's travel to a small village in Devon, England, way back in 1855. One morning, villagers woke up to a bewildering sight. A single line of hoof-like prints stretched for over 100 miles through the snow. These weren't just in the fields. They crossed over rooftops, scaled high walls, and even appeared on the other side of solid haystacks without disturbing them. They seemed to pass through tiny drain pipes, only to reappear on the other side. The prints were described as being from a cloven hoof, which immediately led to terrified whispers of the devil himself walking the earth. Scientific explanations have been proposed, from hopping mice to a weather balloon, but none fully account for the sheer distance and impossible path of these mysterious tracks. To this day, the Devil's Footprints of Devon remain one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. What do you think could leave such a trail? Our final case is more recent and just as unsettling. It happened in a remote Canadian town. A lone trapper named Joe LaBelle vanished from his cabin in the winter of 1930. When he did return, a search party set out. They found his cabin, door ajar, with a meal still on the table. But outside, a single set of tracks led away from the cabin, deep into the woods. The tracks were Joe's, clear as day in the snow. They followed them for miles, until, in the middle of a vast, open clearing, the footprints just stopped. There were no other tracks around, no depressions in the snow to suggest he'd been lifted away, and no broken branches above. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The search party circled the area for hours, but the trail was gone. Joe LaBelle was never seen again. How does a person just disappear from the face of the earth, leaving behind a trail that leads to nothing? From ancient folklore to modern mysteries, these stories share a common, terrifying thread, a trail that promises answers but only delivers more questions. Footprints are supposed to tell a story of where someone has been and where they're going. But in these cases, the story is cut short, leaving us to wonder what horrors lurk just beyond our sight in T-silent white expanse. What do you think happened in these cases? Let me know your theories in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy a good mystery, make sure to subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.
It was Christmas Eve when Daniel left his friend S' house and began walking home through the quiet, snow-covered streets. The streetlights flickered, and the cold made every sound sharper. Halfway home, he noticed a man standing on the opposite sidewalk. The stranger wore a long red coat, most like a Santa outfit, but old, dirty, and torn at the edges. Daniel kept walking. Every few seconds, he glanced back. The man was following him. At first, the stranger stayed on the other side of the road. Then Daniel heard footsteps in the snow. Behind him, when he turned around, the man was suddenly only a few feet away, smiling with cracked teeth. Daniel ran. He didn't stop until he reached his house. When he slammed the door and locked it, he heard soft, slow footsteps walk past his window. The next morning, police were on his street. A neighbor down the road had reported seeing the same man standing outside her window, whispering her name. It was the week before Christmas, and a thick blanket of snow covered our small town, muffling every sound except the crunch of my boots. I was walking home late from a friend's house, cutting through the deserted town square. The Christmas lights twinkled, casting long dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. That's when I first saw him, a man in a bulky, crimson Santa coat, his back to me, standing perfectly still under the flickering lights of the giant town Christmas tree. His stillness was unnerving. As I got closer, I noticed the coat was stained, a dark, wet-looking maroon that wasn't just the fabric's color. A shiver, completely unrelated to the cold, crawled up my spine. I quickened my pace, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel his gaze on me, a heavy, silent pressure. The next day, the unease lingered like a bad taste in my mouth. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the late hour and an overactive imagination. I was decorating our front porch, hanging strings of colorful lights. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of orange and purple. Then I saw him again. He was standing across the street, partially obscured by a large oak tree. The same red coat, the same unsettling stillness. He was just watching. My hands started to tremble, and I dropped a string of lights, the bulbs shattering on the frozen ground. I stared at him, frozen in place. He slowly raised a hand, not to wave, but just raised it, a dark glove against the darkening sky. Then, just as slowly, he lowered it and turned, disappearing behind the tree. I ran inside, locking the door and peering through the blinds. The street was empty, as if he had never been there at all. For 2 days, I didn't see him. The relief was immense, but it was a fragile peace. I started to believe I had imagined the whole thing. It was Christmas Eve, and the house was filled with the smell of gingerbread and the sound of my family's laughter. I felt safe, warm. Later that night, I was in my room, looking out the window at the softly falling snow. The streetlights cast a golden glow on the empty road. Then, a figure stepped out from the shadows between my neighbors' houses. The red coat was unmistakable. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just standing there this time. He was moving, slowly, deliberately, towards my house. My breath caught in my throat. He walked right up our driveway and stopped at the end of the path, just beyond the reach of our porch light. He lifted his head, and for the first time I could see his face in the dim light. It was pale, gaunt, with eyes like two black pits, and he was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched his face. I stumbled back from the window, my mind screaming. I had to tell someone. I ran downstairs, but the living room was empty. My parents had gone to bed. I was alone. A soft scraping sound came from the front door. Scrape, scrape, like fingernails on wood. I crept to the peephole, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I pressed my eye against the cold metal. He was right there, his face pressed against the other side, his one visible eye wide and unblinking, that horrifying smile still plastered on his face. He was trying the doorknob. Jiggle, jiggle, click. My heart stopped. He was in. I didn't scream. I couldn't. All I could do was run. I scrambled up the stairs, my feet slipping. I could hear heavy, slow footsteps behind me, echoing in the silent house. Thump, thump, the sound of his boots on the hardwood floor. He was taking his time. He knew I had nowhere to go. I slammed my bedroom door shut and locked it, shoving my dresser against it with a surge of adrenaline. I could hear him just outside, his breathing a low, ragged sound. Then silence. A deafening, terrifying silence. I held my breath, listening. A faint, cheerful sound started to drift from downstairs. He had turned on the little music box my grandmother gave me, the one that played Silent Night. The gentle melody filled the house, a grotesque soundtrack to my terror. Then I heard a new sound, a slow, rhythmic thud against my bedroom door. Thud. He was knocking, but it wasn't a normal knock. It was the sound of something heavy and soft. I huddled in the far corner of my room, pulling my knees to my chest. The thudding stopped. A piece of paper slid under the door. In shaky, childish handwriting, it read, "Aren't you going to let Santa in?"